Welcome to the next lesson video of my little Cudgeling video lesson series. Today I wanted to talk about, first of all I wanted to show you something because recently I got a new walking stick, an Irish blackthorn walking stick made by Francis McCaffrey of McCaffrey's Crafts in Ireland. I will put a link down in the video description of this shop and also his very interesting YouTube channel where he talks a lot about making Irish blackthorns and also has a very great ongoing series about the faction fights, so the famous or infamous Irish stick fighting faction fights. They mostly use this kind of blackthorn cudgels or sticks to fight. Yeah, I really like this one. I made a longer review or a more detailed review of this walking stick for my Patreon page. So if you are interested in supporting my work with a small monthly donation and get some extra content, you might want to check out the link in the video description below on my Patreon page, and maybe you decide to support my content. So yeah, what I did so far with this one is it was quite a long one, and just for a quick update, I shortened it a little bit, so it's perfect for my height. I wanted to have it around 100 centimeters, and I think it was 101 or 102 centimeters, and I shortened it quite a little bit. First of all, because I wanted to put on a metal tip down here, which I have from my old walking stick, and then I wanted to make it perfect for my taste as a walking stick for hiking, because I not only use this to show off or to fight, but also I want to use it mostly for hiking, probably much more than for fighting. And at the same time, of course, I wanted to have it in my proper length to have a good fighting stick for my kind of stick fighting I do. So yeah, check out the link in the video description and get your own Irish blackthorn, because they are just beautiful walking sticks and they are really good fighting tools. So talking about cudgeling today, basing on the movements of swordsmanship. Therefore we will start with the stick being held in this kind of more sword-like fashion. So it's not important if you have a stick now with a root knob or a metal knob or something like that. So now it can even be a plain stick, and we will talk about that. So first of all, when we talk about adopting our swordsmanship on a stick, then we have to keep in mind that of course with the broadsword we have a very good hand protection, and everyone who's training only the broadsword or mostly the broadsword knows that if you switch over to a weapon which does not have full hand protection like the Basket-Hilt, or no hand protection at all, then you get easy struck in the knuckles, struck on the hand, because you are used to have this good protection, keeping your hand forward, using your moulinets and your cuts and guards and whatnot, and you know you're well protected with this kind of Basket-Hilt. So this is one thing you have to keep in mind, and which makes the switch from the sword to the stick maybe a little bit difficult in the beginning, but you should still stick with it, to use a horrible pun here. The same is when you consider the small sword material, which can also be adopted a bit on the stick. Obviously you don't have a very pointy point with a stick, okay? You might have a metal tip down here, maybe even a quite spiky one, but of course it has not penetration and killing power of a small sword, obviously, so keep that in mind. So when we start with a stick working from our Highland broadsword material, I still would recommend to just start off with standing in your basic fencing stance and having your sword, or as I said, your stick now, like your sword, in your typical guard, okay? And your left hand behind your head, or maybe even more like a little bit more forward, like Miller shows it, and maybe Wyatt shows it too. So you have it here, in an outside guard, can switch to an inside guard, can switch to a hanging guard, and work through all the cuts and guards you do with the broadsword, just to get used to the movement of all that with a stick. So this is the first thing I would recommend. Use your stick like you would use your sword. And then, when you already have sparring experience, put on your mask, use some sticks suited for sparring, so like longer rattan sticks or something like that, or very light walking sticks. Make sure that you have good hand protection, big padded gloves, and then you can go and try out this concept of fencing with a stick, like with a broadsword, with a walking stick, or with a stick, just a simple stick. From there you will learn a lot, especially about how to protect your hand, and maybe you will already adopt to it a little bit. This is the first step. Take your stick, use all the drills we have with a Highland broadsword, with shift and counter and everything. So if you look at example for Barton Wright's Patron and his Lacan, he also has this kind of slip and countering to the head, okay, against a low line attack. So it is already there. We already have it from the sword to the stick, to a walking stick. And you can train this on as separately, just saying, okay, today instead of broadsword we pick up our sticks, then we have sparring, test it out, and then we will see what happens. Though then, of course, if you use this kind of sword-like stance, you will realize that you have to pull your hand a little bit back. You cannot extend your hand like this, okay, because you will hit many times. Of course, you can use it as a bait, as an invitation, but for a start, keep the guard, or better said, the hand with no guard protection down here a little bit lower, if you have an outside guard or an inside guard. So the hand a little bit more here. And with the hanging guard, as I said before, pull it a little bit back. So don't keep it out like this, pull it a little bit back. So now your hand is a little bit more out of the way. Especially when you parry in a hanging guard, try to not block against it. So your hand is in danger, but more slide it back here and let it slide down. So pull it a little bit back. The other thing is you can switch between the guards more fluidly, like you would do maybe with a broadsword, okay? We have sometimes all these fluid motions with the broadsword too. You can use this, but to protect your hand, you might keep moving your hand a little bit more instead of keeping it quite static out in inside guard. So maybe move it a little bit more so your hand is not a target. You can see this in Filipino martial arts, as Krima stick fighting, that they always move their hand with a stick. They never keep it like this in place because the hand is a target, no hand protection. And with a stick, even not a full blow, but just a quick snap cut to the fingers can even break your bones, or at least hurt a lot, so you might lose your stick because of that. So people who do stick fighting know a lot about getting hurt on the fingers, even with hand protection and sparring. So keep that in mind. Move your hand and then switch between inside, outside guard and hanging guard, and don't forget to pull that hand back a little bit to protect the hand. You can use all the guards, all the cuts we are using, okay, all 7 cuts, just in the same angles as we do it with the sword. But then you have to keep in mind, how do I strike? So, of course, a quick snapping motion with a stick can hurt, obviously. But of course, with this kind of root knot ball, this kind of quick snapping, precise cut or hit will cause much more damage than with the regular plain part of the stick. Of course, depending on the material. So this blackthorn walking stick is quite heavy. It has, like, I think around 500-550 grams. So it's quite heavy. And if you do a snap cut with it, this hurts already. But of course, it will not knock down the opponent, probably. It will maybe hurt, it will maybe break some smaller bones like fingers or something like that. It will hurt a lot, but you will not cause too much damage probably. And you have a lighter stick like this. These snap cuts will be quick and swift, but cause not a lot of damage. If I take the bigger end, then I have snap cuts which will cause some damage. But with the plain round part, I will not cause too much damage. So here I have to get some juice in my cut. So with the plain end of the stick, you need to do some wider swing. You have to put some juice into your cut. Okay. Now it's important, we have such cuts with broadsword too. Okay, keep that in mind. We don't have only quick snapping direct cuts. We also have cuts with full moulinets, and some of them stop with a point forward, but some of them are swung through. And for example, you can do with a broadsword a cut number 1, swinging through, stepping over with a traverse, cut number 2. Okay, for example, so you can do like this here. With a broadsword you can do this. And with a stick, of course, if I want to cause damage, I have to swing it a little bit more even than with my sword. Of course, keep in mind to not overpace so that you are turned, so still keep your guard and cut through and coming back to guard. So next step you can do is walking, as we know, with broadsword and everything. But then, with your pulled back guard, you start to do more moulinets with swinging through. Moulinet swinging through. Strike swinging through. Strike swinging through. And you see, you go to guard every time. Then you can also train to go back, not in your broadsword guard, but more in the stick guard, where you have the stick pulled back a little bit more to protect your hand. And the same you can then do with the cut number 2. So you can start from an inside guard, cut number 2, back to an outside guard, cut number 2, back to an inside guard, cut number 2, up to a hanging guard, from a hanging guard, cut number 1, cut number 2, back to an outside guard, and so on and so on. So you learn how to put some power into your stick, cuts into your blows, because that will cause a little bit more damage. This is the first way how to use the stick, using your broadsword skills and adapting it to a stick, without thinking about the root knob, okay? Without thinking about maybe a crooked handle, without thinking about too much about what material the stick is made of. So just adopting your swordsmanship skills on a stick with keeping in mind the most important differences between the sword and the stick. I have no real point to thrust, I don't have a cutting edge, I don't have hand protection. 3 very important points to keep in mind. Everything else works the same way, but I have to adopt. I have to pull back my guards, I have to move my hand a little bit more to not get stuck in the hand, and I have to do maybe more swinging, heavier hitting cuts than I would do with a sword to cause more damage. So, that said, we can talk a little bit about the use of the root knob, about two-handed techniques, and about thrusting with a stick in the next video lesson. So thank you, stay tuned, and see you in the next video.